McLaughlin. Thank you all for your testimony. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the American Correctional Association on February 3rd, 2025, and a letter from the Association of Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International on February 6, 2025. Without objection, so ordered. We will now turn to questions from the panel. I will recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. I'd like to start with you, Ms. Ellman. In your written testimony, we talk about, you say in your testimony, despite calls by this committee for action, congressional mandated deadlines have been ignored at the expense of the drone industry and the American public. I think you were referring to the Beyond Visual Line of Sight, as well as a Rule 2009, which has been out there since 2016. Can you explain a little bit why was the FAA ignoring us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, Chairman Nelson. Thank you. Part 108, which would broadly enable Beyond Visual Line of Sight, as well as increase transparency in the airspace, incentivize electronic conspicuity, can go a really long way, has been, under development for several years now. Section 2209 is kind of on the other side of the coin, focusing on security, requires the FAA to establish a process by which private sector entities, fixed site facilities, critical infrastructure facilities are able to prohibit or limit drone operations, unauthorized drone operations over their property. We're broadly in support of these two rules. They should move forward immediately together. Sure. We don't exactly know why they've been held up, but we see this as and just to be clear, the FAA has done a lot of good work here. They've been held up at kind of higher levels in the interagency. So we see this as a great opportunity for the Trump administration. These are two rules that are ready to go that can really help here, and we hope to see them move forward right away.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, given your knowledge on counter-UAS systems, how do you view the current process of multi-agency coordination needed in the event that mitigation of an aircraft is required?
Well, so we're grateful for our current relationships with both our federal and our local partners. Being successful at an airport when it comes to safety and security really requires a partnership. I think the single biggest thing in the current construct that could make our response times better would be to give persistent authority to those agencies that currently have the ability to mitigate under certain circumstances, but require individual approval each time they do that. I'm told by people that I know and trust that could take days to get that approval. We need that approval in minutes, not days.
And we should be able to address that right in this committee. You agree?
I believe so,
okay.
Yes.
I had an opportunity, obviously, Dallas-Fort Worth. I'm from Texas. I had an opportunity to go visit an airport in the state of Wisconsin, and they were showing me everything there. DHS was showing me the screens, and I said, okay, so they have the ability to detect a drone. Obviously, they show the airspace, and so they can identify it, they can detect it, but they have no way of getting that drone out of that restricted airspace in a timely and, I would say, an efficient manner. They just don't have the ability to do it. So why in the hell don't you have the ability to do it? I think, Ms. Ellman, you talked about, or maybe it was Ms. Cahill, about these certain agencies that have the ability to do it. Department of Energy, DOD, DHS, DOJ, I think Coast Guard underneath the Department of Homeland Security. I said, well, so these drones can fly into these restricted airplaces over airports, and we have to just say, well, we'll get to it when we can. I found that somewhat shocking, and I think the American public that are flying aircraft around, on these airplanes would be appalled to think that if some bad actor, nefarious activity, and that drone flies into that restricted airspace, that we don't have the ability with mitigation. Yes, we do, Mr. McLaughlin, have the ability to tell air traffic control, divert, fly around, get the hell out of the area. And then so as I continue to research this, and then I'm going to show you a prototype of a device. I don't want to scare anybody here, so please, it's not working. It's not. So does everybody know, and maybe the new members in the committee, does everybody know this thing here? This is about $50,000. And this device here is called a D-Drone Defender. It sends a radio frequency and a GPS jammer. That's what it does. So if a drone is flying into that airport, restricted space, an operator can put the crosshairs on that drone, shoot that radio frequency, and it returns the drone back to where it took off. Now, why in the hell don't we have these at our airports? I was assured by the manufacturer, and there are others, that this will not interfere with airplanes. It won't interfere. It won't have any problem with airplanes taking off and landing. I says, if you want to protect the American people, these things should be deployed at our nation's airports. Now, I like the federal government. What we do is we want to kick the can down the road. We just have more studies. That's what we do in America. Well, let's study this, study that. We've been studying things since 2016 and haven't done a damn thing, right? So I'm done with all the studying, and let's come up with a solution to the problem to address aircraft, drones that are flying in restricted airspace that don't belong there. Because eventually, one day, one of these bad actors will take one of those drones and commit a terrorist attack, and it's going to happen on our airline industry. And we should be better than that. Don't tell me it's about money, because this thing costs about $50,000. How much are lives worth? So the technology is there, folks. The technology is there. You just think that we, as Congress and the FAA, could do better to make sure that we address the issue with drones, because they're by the thousands, if not millions. You're going to see more and more of them. Operators are they don't necessarily understand rules, or they get a little confused every once in a while. But to have these things flying in restricted airspace is going to be a problem, whether it's the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday or whether it's in airports across our country. With that, I yield back. I now recognize